Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of A Little Jaded. I'm Joanna, one of your co-hosts today. And in case you missed the last episode, we mentioned that Jaded has been going through some changes. So we took a little bit of a break, and some of those changes are carrying over into the podcast. But yes, today I'm not joined by Jade, but I am joined by Kelly, who also co-hosted the last episode on music journalism, if you haven't heard it yet, and Makayla, who is one of our graphic designers.
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm glad to be back for another episode. So, any listener of the podcast for a while might remember that we used to do this segment called Artist Spotlight, where we would choose an artist who thought was killing it, and we would like to take a deep dive into their career.
Yes, those were some of my favorite episodes personally. We covered so many awesome artists, and one of those was about Harry Styles, who, if you can't tell, if you're watching the video, if you can't tell, we all love Harry here at Dated. So if you want to hear us talk about his whole career spanning from being in One Direction, obviously, to where he is now, go check that out. But today we are specifically celebrating the 4-year anniversary of his sophomore album, Fine Line.
Yeah, that's right. So, for anyone who might be unfamiliar with the album, it was released on December 13th, 2019, and it contains some of Harry's biggest singles, like Watermelon Sugar and Adore You. And today we'll be discussing why this album was influential in his career and how it helped him reach the superstar status he currently holds. So, what I want to hear from all of you is what was your first impression listening to the album?
Oh my God, I'm like, I have to take myself back to where I was in 2019. Um, I specifically remember when Lights Up dropped, which we're going to talk about that later, but when Lights Up dropped, I was just completely speechless. Obviously, if anybody hasn't watched the music video, it's amazing, but I just remember the song felt so different from his first album to me. And it made me really excited because I felt like I was vibing with that sound a lot more because I am like a pop girl at heart. And his first album was very influenced by like 70s rock, which was still really amazing and has some of my favorite songs ever on that album. But I was really excited to see where his music was going to go. And then eventually after that, when he started releasing more songs, I was like, whoa, this is different. This is not like what we knew Harry as a solo artist. But I mean, I loved it. It quickly became one of my favorite albums ever, and it still is one of my favorite ever.
Ah. I remember, like, when the announcement dropped, I was actually in my government class, and we had to stay quiet, we were taking a test or something, and, I, like, had to hold in my excitement. Oh my god. I think when I listened to the first album, like you said, like, Lights Up, that really changed the trajectory of his career from being, like, in One Direction. Like, we saw him as this, like, innocent boy, and then we get Lights Up, and it's like, "Whoa."
Yeah.
Very different. And when I first heard the album, I was like, "This is gonna change his career." It was incredible, like, way different from his first album, and yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree with both of you. The album was, it still is one of my favorite albums of all time, and rightfully so. I think it's like a really solid body of work. Um, my first impression was definitely like this is so new and so reminiscent of also like older music, but still very fresh and new. Um, People who probably know me know that at the time I was not very into pop. Yeah, Lights Up came to me as like um quite a different sound. And that was also around the time that I started listening to Harry also. Ooh, don't cancel me. Um but yeah, I remember I wanted to touch on this for the when we're talking about the trajectory of the album, but the thing that really set up like was the trigger for this new era and was also the trigger for me to start paying attention to him was when he accidentally tweeted "do" on Twitter, and then "do
God.
what" was trending. That was the start of it for me. That was me. I was like jumping into his old discography, which I mean, I knew people who already were raving about it. So yeah, so the whole new album was completely like transformative for me.
Yeah, I wanted to talk about something that you just said. I think I might have mentioned this in the last, like the artist spotlight that we talked about Harry. Um, but when HS1, which is what the fandom calls his first album, which is self-titled Harry Styles, when that first came out and Sign of the Times came out, obviously I was so shook at that, and I was so excited for him to be a solo artist because obviously I was a huge One Direction fan, and that project did do well. The album itself was number one, but I didn't really get so much into his solo music until Lights Up came out. I feel like that completely changed it for me. And after Fine Line, I feel like I was able to go back and listen to HS1 and appreciate it so much more and appreciate the artistry and how different it was from Fine Line. And I think that that says a lot about how Fine Line was just, it helped him so much in a way where it was so easy to listen to. Like anybody from any background who likes any type of music could listen to Fine Line and find at least one song that they like. And that opens them up to Harry and opens them up to his discography. And even people who like discovered Harry as a solo artist and didn't know he was in One Direction. And then they go back and they listen to One Direction. So I feel like Fine Line really opened him up to a wider audience.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I'm proof of that. Um, I knew of the album. I look, okay, when Silent of the Times came out, I was streaming it. I'm not gonna lie. I didn't, it's not like I was oblivious, you know?
Right.
But like I distinctively remember someone recommending, I listened to Kiwi, and this was like 2017. And I was like, oh, because she knew I liked rock, but that was not the rock that I liked. So I was like, oh, I don't really like this album. But I gave it a chance at the time, but obviously my taste changed right when like Lights Up came out. I really like dug into that. I was really into the singer-songwriter, like stripped down type of music as well. So I really resonated with like his previous work. But again, it was really niche. It wasn't commercial for everyone to be, I guess, intrigued in compared to Fine Line, which is so completely diverse and eclectic in genres. And I think that's why it, in part, also gained such a following and gained such an audience. One thing that I absolutely rave about is the ordering of the album. I think it's so like meticulous in the way that he ordered the track list, because you kind of touch on so many different emotions and so many different sounds. So I genuinely think that if you don't listen to Harry Styles, Fine Line is the album you need to check out, because there's, I promise, one song for you at least.
Yeah, I really wanted to talk about like kind of the timeline of the Fine Line era, and we wrote up some key points that we wanted to talk about. But obviously, it started with the Lights Up release on October 11th in 2019, and I remember this was a surprise release. I came home at nighttime and I'm like, Harry released a new song. What is going on? Twitter was exploding, but his first big and kind of viral moment wasn't until Watermelon Sugar.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I remember, what was it? During the pandemic, it came really viral on TikTok, and I was like, "Wow, Harry Styles is popular on TikTok." I didn't know see that happening.
Right, right. And that was released on November 16th and it was debuted on SNL. And I remember I'm not a huge SNL fan or like avid watcher, but I remember he only had Lights Up out at the time. And when you're a musical guest, you sing two songs. So everyone was wondering what's that song that he's going to perform. And then Watermelon Sugar like literally came out that night. He performs it for the first time, debuting it that night, and I was so shook at that.
I I was telling Joanna earlier, the night that it came out, I wanted to watch it because he was also doing double duty. It was the first time he was actually hosting SNL, but I was out for my friend's birthday and I got a little tipsy and then I checked my phone around like midnight and I'm like, oh my God, there's a new song. I listened to it. I fell in love with it immediately. I shed some tears because I loved it so much. But I also I say like I will ride or die for that song no matter the hate that it gets because I think it's so spectacular in its creation. Even though people are like, oh, it's just like repetition. But I genuinely think that it's deserving of its success and its the rapid success of the song on TikTok and things like Makayla was mentioning. It really took everyone by storm. But not right away. And I wanted to also mention that it didn't have a music video at the time. It wasn't pushed for radio at all. It only really impacted radio in like May or June of 2020 or something. Yeah, and he had like other singles too. He had like Adore You and he had Falling and then Golden and then it was I think Golden was before. Yeah, it only came out like as a real single and only like affected TikTok like in the summer. I think that's a really interesting marketing technique.
Yeah. And I wanted to clarify something about that you said, that like a lot of us are still on Twitter and on TikTok and hear all these different fan opinions, but how you were saying like no matter how much hate it gets, you ride for that song. And somebody listening who might just be a casual listener might be like, what do you mean how much hate it got? Wasn't it number one? Yes, it was, but obviously when you're a fan, you appreciate the deep cuts and you appreciate the songs that maybe the general public who isn't an avid listener doesn't really appreciate as much. So, you're like, well, why isn't this song getting appreciated? Why isn't this song becoming number one? And at the end of the day, like artists are so strategic about what songs they release as a single and what songs are not. And Harry waiting to push the song until the summer was such a smart thing because obviously he says like that summer feeling, like it's meant to be a summer song. And it literally was all over TikTok. Like as a Harry fan, you're like, whoa, this is crazy. This hasn't really happened before. Like one of his songs going everywhere. Not even Lights Up, and Lights Up was the first single. So
Yeah.
obviously it was super, super well loved and it deserved that. It was his first number one single on the Billboard Hot 100, streamed over 2 billion times on Spotify. And backtracking a little bit, before like he had the massive success with all of these singles, he had announced what would become the first leg of Love on Tour, exactly a month before the album was released. I remember buying my tickets, not even knowing if I was going to like the album or not, but I wanted to go. And this was before his ticket prices were as crazy as they are now. Um,
Yeah, I think I
I
bought mine
relate.
for like $80.
Mine were 154 Canadian for lower bowl. That's almost a little above standard back in 2019.
right.
That compared to the price that I paid later on, let's not talk about it. Like that was those were crumbs, you know? But
Like,
anyone who's been trying to get tickets to his tour like the last couple of years knows what I'm talking about. Like they were they were competitive and they were pricey.
yeah, and it's crazy because I remember for the first leg of Love on Tour, I managed to get pit tickets, and I think they were 150 before tax, and so after they were around 200 each. And I remember thinking, "Oh my gosh, that was so easy." And at that time, Watermelon Sugar hadn't even come out yet. All that we had was Lights Up, and then he announces the tour. When you think about like where Harry was, and then after COVID and Love on Tour was able to finally happen because Love on Tour was announced in 2019. 2020 happened. Obviously, we know what happened. So it was postponed. And then it finally happened. And at that point, he had already had the success of all of his singles from Fine Line. So the demand for Love on Tour was there. I remember like it was all over TikTok. I feel like it's one of the first tours, especially post COVID, but one of the first tours like for our generation where we were seeing people go all out for the outfits. We were seeing people posting the transitions and traveling for multiple shows. Like that's really when the fandom started growing, and you could see that on social media.
It was definitely like a shift. And I remember that because I mean, I had gone to concerts, so many concerts for years before the pandemic. And the whole, even etiquette, I mean, I could talk about this for hours, but the etiquette had completely changed post COVID. But it was honestly the way that like the first leg of tour, if you don't know, it ran from September 2021 to December 2021. So it was really the first tour to come back and show everyone that like if you actually quarantine, if you actually take responsibility for your health and other people's health, that you could make it work. And yeah, it was proof of that. But also the whole idea of TikTok and social media and like posting about like all the individual differences between shows. Concerts have completely transformed because of the tour, and that made ticket sales completely skyrocket for what would be the next coming legs of tour.
Yeah, I remember, I haven't seen anything that crazy since, because I saw One Direction back in 2014. It wasn't even then, it wasn't even that bad, and I was like, "Wow." Like, the turnout was insane. Like, we were, like, walking, I remember in lines, like, shoulder to shoulder with people, like, throughout the forum, and I've never experienced that before, and I was like, "What is going on?" It's it's crazy.
It was really there. The way that you said it, Kelly, like completely explained like the choice of wording that you used, where you said like there was a shift. I remember going to concerts when I was younger. We're not even that much younger, but like pre-COVID. And even just like in terms of the outfits and the amount of preparation that went into a concert. Like I would literally just put on something and just show up. Like there really wasn't that much.
Jeans and a
Even for
t-shirt, like that was the attire.
yeah,
Yeah.
like even for the artists that I liked, and even for like, going to festivals, like obviously there was YouTube and there was people who were posting like, like YouTube vlogs or whatever, but it wasn't as accessible as when you're on TikTok and you get onto, Harry Styles TikTok or Love on Tour TikTok and you're seeing this mass amount of videos like shoved in your face. It made people interested, and it made people care a little bit more, like, oh, people are going all out, people are bringing the boas and whatever, so like I should do it too, and then that caused even more content to happen. So it's like the fans were really marketing his tour for him.
And you can definitely see that though with the difference between not only like ticket sales, but demand before the first leg and a year later when he was doing, well, we'll get to that, but when he was doing residencies, getting tickets was infinitely harder. And it's because he gained such like a success from that specific leg of tour, that made people want it more. And I think that's also like that really helped him in his career.
Yeah. And for anybody who might not be super familiar, but I'm sure if you're listening, you're probably a little familiar. But he had his US leg of the first Love on Tour that we ever saw was in the fall of 2021, and then he went on to go to Mexico, and he went to um the UK and Europe in that next summer of 2022. But before that, he headlined Coachella, which is
Yeah.
crazy to think about, because when I think of Coachella headliners, I think about people who have been around forever. And obviously, Harry has been around for the past 12 years because he has been, he was in One Direction and then he became a solo artist. But he's only been a solo artist since 2017. That's really only 6 years he's been a solo artist. And he headlined Coachella the last year in 2022. Like that is really so early in his career. Like I remember there were rumors swirling after Love on Tour 2021. People were like, "Oh, I think Harry's going to headline." I was like, "There's literally no way." I had no doubt in my mind he was not going to do it. And then I think pretty sure it was in January that they announced that he was headlining, and I was so I was just
I
so
was gagged.
yeah, like literally, quite frankly, I was literally gagged. I was just like, there's no way this is happening.
I
Then,
wanted to add to that before you continue.
okay,
He only had 22 songs. That's like
right,
bare set.
Yeah.
And you're like, what is he gonna do? What's remarkable?
right,
Well, we'll get to that.
right. Genuinely, I was like, is he really at this point where he can do this? If that's coming from a fan, I was like, is this like,
Yeah.
is he ready for that? Like that felt so quick to me. And before that was the Grammys.
The famous boas.
Oh,
Oh my God, wait, yes. So the Grammys was before Love on Tour because the 2020 Grammys got pushed because of COVID. That
you're
happened.
right.
Yeah,
No,
so
it
I'm
was
like just remembering now. So what happened? Wow, I really just completely forgot about this. But yeah,
it's
so he
March 21st, 2020, March 14th, 2021.
yeah, so that's before
Yeah. Before
and
Coachella.
tours really weren't happening yet at that point. So the Grammys happened in 2021. Um,
Yeah.
so he had been nominated at that point for Fine Line, and for Watermelon Sugar, nominated for Best Pop Vocal Album, and then Best Pop Solo Performance for Watermelon Sugar, and Best Music Video for Adore You. And that was the first time he won a Grammy. He won for Best Pop Solo Performance for Watermelon Sugar, and he performed Watermelon Sugar on the Grammys, and that's when he wore his boa. And you're
Mhm.
completely right, Makayla. I completely forgot. That's when he debuted, and then after that, the boas became a thing at the tour.
Yeah, it became like a staple for H lot like fashion. I remember that. Like walking around the forum and seeing all the little feathers on the ground.
Kind of going back to backtracking, what were your impressions of like the Grammys?
I was really excited. I remember I dressed up in like my Love on Tour outfit and like put on makeup and everything. I sat on my couch and I was just like waiting like for it to start. And then I didn't know he was gonna open with like him.
Mm-hmm.
And when they started, I was like, whoa. That was like a pivotal moment in his career opening for the Grammys. And then he won his first Grammy and I really I think I cried when I watched it. But yeah, just it's really insane how much he's gotten through like in like little time, you know?
Yeah, I remember when I was watching the Grammys, honestly, like obviously as a fan, I really wanted him to win. Um, I was not surprised that he didn't win Best Pop Vocal Album because he was against Future Nostalgia, Dua Lipa, and I was pretty confident that what was going to end up winning, and it did. But at the end of the day, obviously the Grammys is voted by members of the Academy. It's not by fans. So it really could have gone either way. But when he won, I think I literally screamed. And I was just so surprised because it's just happened so quickly. Where I'm just like, what do you mean Harry Styles isn't like an indie artist? Like what? Like, what do you mean he has like billions of like listeners on Spotify? Like it just doesn't like I can't comprehend it sometimes.
My
Um
little indie artist, like how dare people know him?
literally
Yeah, I mean, I was there. I was rooting. I was on my couch in my living room. I was like, come on, I hope he wins. I was wearing the sweater probably. Um, live tweeting. Like I was there. I was paying attention. I was like, he should have won, and this is back to the topic of this episode. He should have at least been nominated for Album of the Year, but because he was still very fresh into the Grammys' eyes, he
Mhm.
was still getting more serious as a musician, detached from his like boy band name. So it made sense that he started off with a little bit here and there of like a couple nominations, which is more than a lot of people, let's be honest. But I'd really like, as a fan, I would have been like, oh, he should have at least been nominated for Album of the Year. I know why he didn't win. Folklore definitely should have won, but like,
right. Yeah, and then I mean, staying on the track of like the timeline where we're at, where in January of 2022 is when he got announced that he was going to be the Coachella headliner for that year in April. At that point, Fine Line had already been out for about 2 years at that point. And I think because he had reached this like status, he hasn't released anything in the past 3 years. Where's the next project? Like there was so much anticipation. Everyone was waiting, like, where is like HS3, what they called at the time? Everyone was waiting for it and wondering what was it going to sound like? Was it going to, go back to that rock vibe from songs like She, and even reverting back to like Kiwi and Only Angel? Was it going to be that? Or was it going to be more like Watermelon Sugar and Adore You, like going more on that pop route? Early in the year of 2022, leading up to Coachella, everyone was talking about him. And then eventually he went on to release the first single from Harry's House literally a week before Coachella. He released As It Was, and it was
Crazy.
instantly, yeah, literally crazy, and instantly like the biggest success of his career to date.
For sure. And like As It Was, I mean, it is monumental. Like I was just doing research for this podcast, for Fine Line. The amount of times that I've come across another achievement for As It Was is like it's crazy. It's like it's multiple billion streams now. But with that, that was like setting the precedent for like the next album. And you could really see how much people were waiting for new music. It wasn't just that like everyone was like, oh, like when is he gonna release something new? It was new fans who were just added on to like the fandom through like the last couple of years, with Watermelon Sugar being a massive hit, with Love on Tour trending on TikTok. Everyone was so excited and like waiting, and you can even tell in the numbers, because if you check the number of likes when he announced Fine Line, when he announced Harry's House, it was more than triple. His career had, I guess, like also tripled.
Yeah. And even like I was also doing like research too about As It Was, and As It Was broke the Guinness World Record for the most streamed track on Spotify in 24 hours by a male artist. And I mean, I love the song. It was my most streamed song of 2022. It was a lot of people's most streamed song. It's a bop. It's so good. But you literally could not go on TikTok without hearing the song. Like it was everywhere. Everyone was using it. And so it was just helping it grow more and more. It spent 10 weeks at the top of the UK chart. It became the longest running number one and best selling single of 2022. It was number one for 15 consecutive weeks, like crazy.
And it just keeps going. Like
Yeah,
it's not going anywhere. And I love that for him. Get your bag, sir.
seriously. And if it wasn't for like the commercial success of something like, Watermelon Sugar, would he have been where he is now?
I mean, obviously, a lot of factors play into that. Like, we were all stuck inside. We were all strapped to our phones. We were all consuming that song, and it kept going and going, and it was an earworm, and everyone was listening to it, and
Mm-hmm.
that really helped. But I think it's definitely like one in a lifetime. You don't really come across such a monumental like shift in someone's career. Not often, at least.
Right. I feel like
Yeah.
with a lot of artists, like it's very much so like a gradual build. Like,
Yeah.
they start like, oh, doing decently well. The next project, oh, they're getting slightly bigger. And then, a lot of people like, you think of artists like Noah Khan, who's like doing really, really big right now. Like he's been around for a while. It's crazy because like his second album did so well. Third album was like monumental, crazy, like as best as it could be. And now he's just gonna keep getting bigger and bigger. And how you said, Kelly, you thought Fine Line should be nominated for Album of the Year at the Grammys. Harry's House then went on to win Album of the Year at the next Grammys.
Deserved.
Yeah,
That's
no,
all I'll say on that.
100%. Like,
Nobody come for me, but
no, I mean, it it was so like commercially successful, and I think a lot of people, they see that and then they get like jaded by that, and they're like, oh, just because it's so commercially successful doesn't mean that it is the best album. And 100% I agree, but as a musician he's just gotten better and better, and I think it was deserved. That album was so good. Like I didn't know what to expect after how well received Fine Line was, I was honestly really nervous about what Harry's house was going to sound like. But I mean, he literally blew it out of the water. So
I mean, no, genuinely, my thoughts on his success obviously comes from a bunch of different things. But the one thing that like even underrated almost is that he is such a good artist. And when I say artist, I don't mean just like a singer. I mean like someone who really meticulously pays so much like he nurtures his art so much and he carefully creates all his work. And I think that's like that authenticity and that like genuine love for creating music is what stood out and what made it the album of the year, whether you like it or not. And I could talk about this forever. Like I was listening to I don't know if you saw there's a clip of Jacob Elordi on Kelly Clarkson. He was saying how he recently like dove back into David Bowie's career and was saying like, oh, like everyone knows David Bowie, like you know the name, but then you go back into his music catalog and you're like, wow, he like really is an artist in his music. And I agree. And I guess that kind of also comes with like the weight of the name. And I think that happens with Harry as well. But like he's he's such a good artist, is very underappreciated and underrated in his actual artistry. Okay, I'll leave it at that.
no, I agree. I agree. I think especially he had that weight and that pressure of being Harry Styles from One Direction. Even now,
Mhm.
like you'll say, like I think he's starting to get to that point where he has separated himself from One Direction and he's just become Harry Styles. And I feel like before you would, say like if someone was to ask like my favorite artist, I'd say like, oh, Harry Styles, and be like, oh, from One Direction. Like there's always that little tagline connected to it. And there still is that a little bit today, but he's starting to become more of his own entity, like as an artist, which is super impressive because there's so many artists who never really can get rid of that little tagline. They can never get
Yeah.
like, oh, they're from that. That is what they're best known for. And Harry is like at the point where he is best known for his own stuff. And like there was that statistic that Kelly you were talking about like his tours um passing the success of like One Direction's tours.
Yeah, so I saw I don't know the exact like numbers, but they were saying how his Love on Tour, which we'll get back to, his Love on Tour completely grossed so much that it eclipsed all of One Direction's tours combined. Like that's how much money he got. And people are like, oh, okay, yeah, but like, he was on tour for 3 years. He was on tour for 2 years. He did 7 legs. He did residencies. He touched like 5 continents. 100 it's either 169 or 173 shows. It's like a debate online apparently. I couldn't go back into it. And yeah, it one of the most like ridiculous things is that it's the fourth highest grossing tours of all time, tied with like Coldplay at 617 million US dollars for a tour.
That is
Um,
crazy. Especially
freaking
when you think about an artist like Coldplay, you think of Coldplay and they are literally mega superstars. Like they've been around for years and years, like since we were super young. They've been around for so long. And obviously Harry has also, but like as a solo artist, he's only been touring since 2018.
And not only that, but if you pair it to who are above them, and that's like Elton John and U2, like he's up there with his idols, and I think that's like freaking ridiculous, but cool.
I know once Stevie Nicks once said that he's just a timeless artist and that like um he has the charisma of like artists of her time. And I honestly really believe that because if you compare like I think it was Sloan Castle? Yeah, Sloan Castle to like Freddie Mercury performing there back in the 80s, it's like almost the same crowd, same energy. It's crazy to me.
Oh, at Wembley?
Was it
No, it was
Wembley?
at Sloane Castle in Ireland. I think that's the biggest venue in the
Yeah,
world.
it's that.
And
Oh yeah, Slane Castle. It was he was there one of like 15 or one of 19 artists to be invited there
yeah,
of
like
all time, and like Queen was there too.
yeah, um like his success can be compared to artists who've been around for double, triple the amount of time that he's been around. I wanted to talk about how he went on to do the residencies. That falls into the Love on Tour success because it still was technically another leg of Love on Tour, but he went on to do a chain of residencies in arenas at a bunch of cities all across the US and in Canada. Harry received a banner from Madison Square Garden in New York for his 15 sold out nights. And the only other artist who has a banner in that arena is Billy Joel. And he has a banner also at the Forum in LA because he also did the 15 sold out nights. It's just like another one, thank you. Another one, thank you.
Like he keeps adding achievements to his belt. There's a funny tweet about that, but I don't remember what it was exactly. It was like, how can you be upset that he is so successful when he keeps adding achievements to his belt? And I'm like, you know what, you're right. But I would like to brag that I contributed to that 15 sold out shows at MSG because that was my first Harry show. It was at MSG.
Like, I was lucky enough to go to the Forum, and that was absolutely like incredible.
Yeah.
Same. I went to 4 shows all throughout the 4 years, 4 years.
Yeah. And we didn't even talk about like Harry Ween, like how massive that was like a success. Like that obviously like falls into Love on Tour, but like that was its own crazy thing. And like there were literal fans who were featured in Vogue because of the crazy outfits that they made. And like the dedication in the fandom is like literally only comparable to like, the Swifties or even like the K-pop groups. Like there really are like a small amount of fandoms who are like as dedicated as them.
Not even just dedicated, but like so powerful.
Yeah.
Like it's such a massive voice. And they like the fandom, I mean, being part of the fandom has been like a blessing and a curse for different reasons, but it's you really have that like identity with the artist, even though it's like towing the line of a parasocial relationship. It's still it's still very strong and connected, and it has this sense of identity, and it has this idea of how to be powerful. And even like I think that Harry just like completely cultivates it, but he doesn't even have to do anything, and it just does it itself. And I think that's just like the whole love that comes with the fandom, and that comes with like wanting to support him and wanting to uplift him. And I think that's really cool. Like he's said that he doesn't feel like he is telling people to be a certain way. He just feels like they're just doing it, and he just happens to be like a pe pegboard. Is that what it's called? Like
Yeah, I know what you mean.
to project onto him, and he just like exists, and everyone just creates this massive like community. And I think that's really like special. And like you said, it's very Swifty, it's very K-pop fan, but it's a little rare. It's not everyone is fortunate to have such massive dedicated fandoms.
Yeah. And it's so telling also that the fans are like the his artistry is reflected by like how much like the fans care about him, the fact that he is this like elusive person in terms of like his social media presence, and like even with like his marketing, like he isn't the type of person to do every single BuzzFeed video to market his album or to promote his album, like he doesn't do all those interviews. He's really selective with the type of interviews that he does, like the Zane Lowe interviews. Fabulous.
Mhm.
Would die for him to go on Zach Sang though. That would be amazing. But
There's
yeah,
like 7-minute clip with him, but that's all.
yeah. But like, like a
Yeah.
full interview with Zach Sang would be so good. Um, but yeah, like the fact that he really is just existing. He really is just creating this art and expressing himself and allowing other people to feel confident and comfortable to express themselves is what makes him continuously like so successful.
Yeah. And also to close off that thought, just like I was saying about how he creates such a big community of love, that Love on Tour, while I say it's a massive success, that tour also raised $6.5 million for charity. And I think that's great. Some tours don't even do any charity, you know? So I think that's also something I'd love to highlight because I feel like a lot of people that usually goes swept under the rug. And if you would like to know the lengthy list of charities, I think Forbes has it or Variety or something. So
Mm-hmm.
worth checking out if you're like skeptical.
Yeah, I feel like he's just always, portrayed like, this positive persona and positive message. And I feel like that really especially started with Fine Line. Like, he coined the treat people with kindness. And then he was like, I want to create this into a song for my fans. And that gave the fans a sense of importance and a sense of belonging. And, creating the boot scoot to treat people with kindness and like just like small things like that are so ingrained in the fandom, and the fact that he supports all of it and he supports all types of people. And he did like the headcount thing on both of the like on the tours for getting people registered to vote. Like that's also so significant because he has such a young fan base. Like Harry has been able to register thousands and thousands of people to vote just from Love on Tour.
And I
Right.
remember he did Reverb too. I think the first leg of the tour, where you can buy like a water bottle for like $25 and you're helping donate that to save the planet, which is really cool.
Yeah, and he also did for that and also for the residencies, he did that too. And he also did for to end gun violence. And I think it was very topical for what the state of I mean, I'm not American, but for the States, it was a very like prominent issue at the time. Well, it still is, but at the time it was really prominent. So a lot of the proceeds of the charities that people would support, or like you'd have booths around in the venue if people aren't familiar, you could go and donate for that. And they also had like projected on the screen, they had like text a certain number to donate. And I thought that was really it was a really good way to use your platform in a way that isn't forcing people to do something. And it makes people feel almost positive to donate or to pay attention to causes that like maybe people aren't completely familiar with, you know?
Yeah, what he stands for and what he is, promoting in his music and outside of his music is also something that, encourages somebody to want to, be a fan and want to give him a little bit more of their time. And something that we wanted to touch on also was how Stevie Nicks was praising this album. Kelly, if you want to talk about that.
Yeah, sure. I mean, anyone who really like backed Harry up at the start of it was Stevie Nicks. They are like besties. It's so adorable considering they're like 50-year age difference. But yeah, she really posted a whole letter when the album first came out saying that it was Harry's Rumors. And if you don't know what Rumors is like the staple album of Fleetwood Mac. Stevie Nicks was in Fleetwood Mac, in case you didn't know. And she was praising it from the start. She was saying it was his magnum opus at the time. Obviously, now we see that he has even more success in Harry's House, but at the time, for a 25-year-old to release his magnum opus, it's crazy. But Fine Line, I would like to say to close off, was one of the biggest monumental albums. It was the first album like to reach number one of the 2020 decades. It was one of the longest running albums on the charts. It now is the 19th most streamed album of all time on Spotify, achieving 8.5 billion streams, and was also ranked as number 491 as Rolling Stone's top 500 greatest albums of all time.
Yeah, it's definitely gonna be timeless. Like when years come, it's gonna be like you said, rumors, literally.
Yeah, his magnum opus. It's such a timeless album. It transcends the mainstream like fad of like whatever music is trending. So if you didn't listen to it before, maybe this could sway your decision.
So true.
What was your first top three, top four songs when the album first released? And what were your top three, top four songs now?
Cherry, I know for sure.
Real, so real.
Right.
And maybe Tribute of Kindness. I don't remember my third, but those were my top two.
Yeah.
And I think now my favorite is still Cherry because that's my song. I love it forever. And I'm gonna go with To Be So Lonely. It's like
Oh,
so underrated. I love it.
so true.
Yes. I think it's it's so hard for me to remember. I wish I had written it down. I know me and Kelly were talking about it before, and she said she literally wrote it down or like she tweeted it. So you can look back at what they were. I'm just kind of going off of memory. But I know for sure Falling was such a standout for me when I was first listening to it. I loved Falling. I also really loved Treat People with Kindness too. I just thought it was just such a cute song, and I loved that he really committed to the bit and made it into a song. I just thought that that was really awesome. And I think he said that that was one of the hardest songs for him to make. That and Watermelon Sugar were like some of the hardest songs he
Right.
ever had to create, because he had the concept, but it's like, okay, how do I create a statement into a song? And the fact that he did it, and it's one of the best songs to hear live, so impressive. So
Yeah.
definitely that. And I mean, I've also always been a Cherry girl. I've always loved it. I think now my top, it's definitely it's shifted a lot. It's my top is definitely Canyon Moon is my number one. That's like my top in my top three Harry songs of all time. I love Canyon Moon. Um, I still love Cherry and Golden.
So, so true. My top three. Like I say, I ride or die for Watermelon Sugar for many reasons, but that's actually not my top three. My top three would be, and it hasn't shifted that much from then and now because I'm still very like songs still stick out to me. And that's She, because I love a good 2 minute electric guitar solo if that's enticing to anyone who doesn't know it yet. Fine Line, another 6 minute song, and which is the title track of the album. It's the closer. And I think Cherry or Falling were in my top three at the start. And the only difference, I guess, no, yeah, I think Golden was my third, and then now I think it's Cherry that's my third. So yeah, Cherry, She, and Fine Line are my top three.
Yeah. If anyone is listening and hasn't heard it and has been living under a rock, you have to go back and listen, because every song has something for somebody, like no matter what you like to listen to. Like if you like that 70s kind of rock vibe, go check out She. If you want a ballad that's going to make you cry, go listen to Falling or Fine Line. If you want something upbeat, go listen to Canyon Moon or Treat Me with Kindness. Like there's so many different options on this album, truly. I mean, we've been talking for way too long already. We're going to talk about this also on our Instagram. So if anyone's not following the Jaded Productions Instagram, definitely go do that. It's just jaded.productions on Instagram. We're going to be talking about that and talking about more amazing albums and more like monumental things in music, both there and on the podcast, because we obviously love talking about music. We're all fans of music, and we're going to keep bringing more people from the team onto the podcast to talk about these different topics. So if you liked this one, stick around, because we're definitely going to do more stuff like this. But yeah, thank you for listening to another episode of A Little Jaded.